Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Federation Hall. If you haven't met me, I'm David Secret. You should have all have met me by now, so I'm going to stop saying that. No, I'm not. I'm just going to say it. Right. So if you haven't met me, I'm David Secret. I'm the director of the Fiona and Sydney Maya Gallery and also the person that puts the Art Forum program together. And before we start, I'm inviting you to join me in grounding yourself in the deep knowledge that for thousands of generations before the existence of the Victorian College of the Arts and the University of Melbourne, that the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri people of the Eora Nation lived and continue to live on this land, and that sovereignty has never been ceded. The Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri made paintings and sculptures, they practiced song and dance, they raised families, shared stories, practiced healing, and these rituals continue today. So it's with joy and honour that I acknowledge the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri elders, past, present, and those yet to come. And I acknowledge their inspiring resilience and the gift of their profound relationship with time, country, and cosmos. Before I introduce our guest speaker, Archie Barry, I do want to let people in Zoom land know that we've had a little bit of a technical difficulty, and Archie is going to be showing some video material, and the technical difficulty is that the sound component of those videos will not be available via Zoom. It will only be available for the people in Federation Hall. So apologies for that. So our guest speaker, Archie Barry. Archie is an artist who works with performance, video, sculpture, and music composition and production. Born in 1990 and raised on the coastal regions of the Eora Nation, Sydney, their work is autobiographical, somatic, and process-led. They create self-portraiture that troubles dominant notions of personhood as stable, legible, and sequential. Their practice takes shape through a genealogy of personas devised from their experiences of mortality, power, and transgender embodiment. Archie's work has been presented at leading Australian institutions, including the National Gallery of Victoria, the Australian Centre for Contemporary Art, the Museum of Contemporary Art, Monash University Museum of Art, Heide Museum of Modern Art, and Contemporary Art Tasmania, amongst others. They've undertaken a range of artist residencies, including the FD13 Residency for the Arts in Minneapolis, the Visiting Artist Scholar at Parsons, the New School, New York, and Artist in Residence at Phasmid Studios, Berlin. In 2019, Archie co-wrote Clear Expectations, Guidelines for Institutions, Galleries, and Curators working with trans, non-binary, and gender diverse artists in Australia, which has been widely received as a best practice document in Australia and internationally. Archie is currently undertaking a PhD here at the VCA, where they're also a sessional lecturer. Wherever you are, please make Archie Barry very, very welcome.
Thank you so much, David. If I talk this loud, can you all hear me? Yeah, great. Well, I will just start off by echoing David's acknowledgement to country with some encouragement that we can all learn to listen more openly to the lived realities and the requests of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, to understand the way that colonization touches everything and to understand what reparations are being requested. And I'm choosing to say this because I think that as a community of thinkers and producers of culture, that we have the ability to transform ourselves and become more responsive. So at the moment we have 7 months to think about and understand and learn what the difference between a voice and a treaty are, what those two things foreclose and allow, and what different groups of people are calling for before we have a national referendum. I also want to have just a moment to acknowledge the trans and gender diverse people in the room as well, and on Zoom. And just thank you for your solidarity and power and the past and ongoing support networks that allow us to even come into existence in the first place. And I want to also just acknowledge that it's actually difficult for me to show up and speak in person today, given the events of last weekend at Parliament House with a clash between neo-Nazi and trans rights activists. That experience has had a huge impact on my community and me, and it's been depressing, enraging, numbing, and it's impossible to ignore. And so I don't want to ignore it here either. And I might be emotional, and that's okay. So I'll just begin talking about my practice. In contrast to the way that trans people, our existence and our rights are polarized often either as heroes of individualism and examples of progress, or demonized as unnatural freaks in politics and media, my art practice prioritizes a trans sensorium, which means trans thoughts, trans sensations, trans feelings, kind of trans affect theory, but in practice, opposed to just trans appearances. And so to do this, I often use language which is abstracted, either written or sung, in order to create subtle and also unsettling affective states. My practice is guided by the idea that the mood is the medium, so I use whatever artistic means will assist me to communicate a particular affect. So I work across video performance, writing, music production, and also illustration. And my practice is deeply indebted to other people. And so I'd like to acknowledge the people who I'm grateful for. I'm grateful to my friends who are social workers, mental health workers, and sex workers who keep me grounded in a daily interconnected practice of trans survival. And my practice also feels like a legacy that I was given through circumstance. And that circumstance is that there were a number of artists in my extended family and immediate family who raised me and all died in the year that I turned 15. So I'm grateful to my dad, to my maternal grandfather, to my father's best friend and my mother's best friend. These adults in my life built their homes and made their artwork outside of any kind of institutional framework or recognition. And they taught me how to be unafraid of being messy. And they taught me to experiment without thinking about outcomes. And they taught me how to think with my hands and think spatially. So I do feel like I've inherited their creative energy, and that my artistic practice is in some ways a conversation with these people, my dead family. So in this way, my work is about mortality, embodiment and disembodiment. And for this talk today, what I will do is share some excerpts of diary writing, because keeping a diary has been a practice that informs my art making, and it's something that I've done across my whole life. And I'll also share a few excerpts of performance and video artwork without giving too much explanation, just to give the artwork space to breathe. Transforming doesn't feel good or safe. Transformative experiences shake you to the core of your very being. They make you shake. Thinking about being shaken out of a self and into another self, it's unsettling to realize forces within me that don't make sense. The willingness to move towards unsettling intuition, to being wrong, to finding out, to renegotiating every social code are the things that make trans people and gender diverse people far more open to having our egos disarranged by experience. And this is our foundation stone of solidarity with others who are unsettled by the state. Trans wisdom undoes scientific rationalism and reliance on evidence. Trans wisdom is knowing that you exist outside of a coherent self-narrative. This is the shake back.
And I'm not really real, and I'm not fake. It's enough to break me and shake me from my sleep, where I dream that I'm awake. And I'm not really real, and I'm not fake. It's enough to break me and shake me from my sleep, where I dream that I'm awake. And I'm not really real, and I'm not fake. It's enough to break me and shake me from my sleep, where I dream that I'm awake.
So this excerpt is from a performance work titled Hypnic, which I devised while I was studying here at the VCA doing a master's. And it's the first work that pulled my practice into public domain. The title of the work is Hypnic, which refers to a hypnic jerk, which is the experience of being jolted awake as you're falling asleep. And for me, the combination of slowness, the simplicity of the gestures, the major harmony in the two melodies, and lyrics about dreaming and dreaming that you're awake create a kind of quiet atmosphere, which I keep returning to across my practice. Also, this performance kind of changed and grew with me as I changed and grew. So in the first 3 iterations at ACCA and Art Space, the sculpture sang a pitch lowered alto register, and I sang the higher soprano register. And then as my voice changed over time for the final 2 iterations at the Margaret Lawrence Gallery and Sydney Contemporary Art Fair, our voices switched. I bought this book just before performing at Sydney Contemporary Art Fair. My left hand has a sculpture glued to it. Very tired. Sitting at Spence and Daisy's dining table, tired. Walked from Carriage Works to their house in Marrickville and felt so strange along the way. Strange feelings, also post-performances. So big and display-oriented, that space. Earlier today, I walked through before the art fair was open to the public, and it comforted me that I could smell the artwork, the resin and plastic smells. That molecular airborne presence was comforting, but it's hard to say why. The time between performances slipped by so quickly. It was a pleasure just to sit with myself and meditate and do nothing and have some feelings and shivers and have a few tears, just allow emotions to be present and felt. The thought I had on my walk back, I felt like I wasn't there, walked through two scenes from dreams, a road corner and a park. And I thought that existing in a place really is something that barely happens. Bodies move through spaces so much that they are hardly anywhere. And lying down next to Pushy the cat a little earlier, and how my cheek and face sagged to the side like a bag with stubble on it. And the other thought, while I was walking, that I'm a man with a girl body, and that and the way that thought was not a discrepancy or a problem or a discomfort, but rather just a nice feeling of understanding. Phone is running out of battery. How does beef be this texture? How to connect with people, how to do it when you're tired but you want it, drugs. No phone credit. I asked the strangers in the cafe how to get to Alaska, and they showed me on Google Maps. They looked it up and described the directions to me. I met Sebastian, who set up Alaska. We talked about the space being welcoming and not labeled as queer, a politics in actions, not words. Why do we say tactic when what we're calling a tactic is often the unconscious, unmeditated arrival of the necessary means to survive? Describing survival with the word tactic is a retroactive attempt to legitimate, sanitize, and make sane what is, in its arising, unplanned and desperate. I'm just going to glide over this quote. So I'm going to show two short video work, which were are part of a series of 7 short video works that were commissioned by Artspace for the 52 Actions commissioning platform, which commissions 52 living artists working in Australia to make work about new methods of survival and revival. So I'll play the works and speak to them.
ENDIVIDIVIDUALISM, DECENDRALISE full stop. ENDIVIDIVIDUALISM, DECENDRALISE full stop. ENDIVIDIV.
So the work spells out end individualism, decentralize. And I guess the question for me is like, where has individualism gotten us? And I think that we've gotten into a very isolated state where we perceive ourselves as chronically unique, which is not very productive or helpful for our survival. So the work is, I guess, subtly saying, let's move towards interdependence. So the words which were spelled aloud across the 7 works were from unpublished song lyrics and also diary entries. I'll just read the description of the project quickly. So I'm going to spell aloud for you each day this week. To spell something out is to explain and to sequence correctly, but I want to spell away from meaning and slip into the frustration and pleasure of sounds. A spell can be a magical charm said aloud, thought of as raw, nonsensical language of creation bound up in power. A spell can also be a short period of time, or a seizure, or a specific psychological chamber of experience. I think about surveillance a lot because it's ubiquitous, especially now that our language-based communication travels almost wholly through the internet. I like singing and spelling aloud because most algorithmic listening technologies can't reconstruct the words, which means that I can tell you things that won't fragment into data as easily as speech and text does. The visual accompaniments are selfie videos abstracted through a variety of post-production color and time remapping filters, edited to breathe with each letter. So this is the second work in that series.
THICKERWATERWUATEREREMEANSCLENWASHING FLOODEFWHATEREFWHATERYOURTHINKING THICKERWAT.
Thicker water everywhere means cleaner brainwashing. Floodlit amphitheater of whatever you're thinking. So that's a song about the internet. A floodlit amphitheater, a venue, stage, a place where whatever you think is available to corporations. The lyrics from this video work also became a song in a later project, which I will also speak to in a minute. This diary entry is about an artwork that I will show you next, and it was written while I was making the artwork. Hair tied in a high pony. Ocean was born on Friday night at 8 p.m. by cesarean. But we haven't met yet. That's the baby I used to live with. I can't wait to meet someone so fresh to the world who still has that miracle energy. In scaffolding preface, I want to feel the wonder of not knowing. I want to take scientific rationalism and its process of dissecting into an emotive environment where the unrecognizable parts of ourselves, non-speaking voices, my inner face, are precious and emancipatory. The concha of the nose, facial coral packing tight of organs working in collaboration. The way that a groan, sigh, cry, or laugh lays the alphabet to rest and says so much without saying anything at all. That is a kind of commons. We can't know the truth because our knowledge is always biased and incomplete. Bringing feelings back into how I understand science, from a mechanistic view of life to a systemic view of life. So I wanted to just read out a little bit of this essay written by Pip Wallace about this artwork. The title of the work is Scaffolding Preface. I don't think I said that before. It was commissioned for an exhibition at the Monash University Museum of Art in 2021. So there's a moment in the artwork when the voice breaks into long, distorted, silent laughter. Laughter for Bataille is an eruption that can overwhelm any distinction between interiority and exteriority. It takes us beyond knowledge to unknowing, to an exhaustion of signification. Oh, no, I can't read. How challenging. Well, I guess we just don't know the last few words of the Bataille, so I don't remember what's from my head. Aha, thank you, Jen. Yeah. Well, okay, here we go. Laughter for Bataille is an eruption that can overwhelm any distinction between interiority and exteriority and takes us beyond knowledge to unknowing, to an exhaustion of signification. The subjectivity is shattered. He writes, communication cannot proceed from one full and intact individual to another. It requires individuals whose separate existence in themselves is risked. It is a being suspended in the beyond of oneself at the limit of nothingness. The humming vocals of the work reverberate with the quivering of single-celled organisms, the movement of air and shredded plastic, the pulsing of streetlights. These utterances beyond language commune not only with another ear, but with the vibrational currents that circulate through all matter in ecstatic immanence. That's an install shot of the work at MoMA. And a few images of the work installed at the Perth Institute of Contemporary Art, where it is showing until the 23rd of April. Okay. So the building near the golf course, which was a apartment building that was being built at the time, it was a construction site. The lack of inside, outside, the weather inside. This pre-inhabitation period, enclosed and exposed, something about being in a state of becoming. Ownership and labor, a space belonging temporarily to people making it. The builder's place of work, the arrangement of space, the procedures I don't understand, things left behind. Making a mark, marking one's work, bottles, food waste, materials piled high or placed. Being indoors feels gross and wrong. Built spaces impervious to the weather is disturbing in its lack of disturbance. How and why, how and when did your interest in art begin? It began with seeing paintings everywhere. It began with finding a space outside but within my family where I could be myself and grow myself and create a safer, imagined environment. It began with finding solace. It began with living by the ocean and being around the vast living entity of Sydney Harbour. It began with my parents, my dad's drawing. It began with my brother's drawing. It began with my mum's sculptures. It began with my grandpa's paintings. It began with playing. began with making books. It began with walking through the bush, with waking up singing, with playing alone outside, with noticing animals, with singing to animals, with singing to myself. With singing with sudden confidence, making myself a home when I always felt homesick, even living with my family, being with myself, learning to be with myself. This will be the last artwork that I will speak about and share. It's a sound project titled Multiply, which was a commission from ACCA in 2020. It was all produced during the pandemic lockdowns here. I think about it like a soundtrack to imagery that doesn't exist yet, and some of the sounds and music in this project have informed video work that I've made since, and I think will continue to feed into the video work that I am making into the future. This is just like a working document. I wanted to share something about my process. So this is a rubric that I filled out as I was developing the artwork, and it helped me consolidate my research and what I was experiencing and what I was curious about at the time. So I'll read some of the description at the top. So Multiply is about the will to imagination that's necessary for social reform and human survival. Responding to the coronavirus pandemic and the subsequent political upheavals, the work is a conversation about human self-determination and interdependence laid out by and between 5 different personas. Multiply takes place through disparate times, places, gestures, and politics. These interweaving stories are embedded in the work. They're not literal and they're not metaphorical. They are sense impressions collected from places I've been and interactions I've had, fractured and rearranged into a 5-track score. Very few human experiences are orderly, and this work expresses affects of displacement and confusion. So I was really invested at the time in developing and then finding voices for different personas to communicate different affects, different philosophies, politics, etc. So the first track, titled Breeding, is the voice of a virus. It's many voices with one script that mutates. And then there's 5 tracks in total, but I've just cut this because I'll play 2 excerpts from these 2 songs. The final work, called The Building, is the voice of aluminium molecules. Okay, maybe I need to find this work on the internet because I can't, it doesn't seem to be embedded in my slideshow. So it's awkward publicly Googling myself. Okay. Very audible.
which breeds pain, which breeds compassion, 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 which breeds pain, which breeds compassion.
There is the sound from Heide in full screen. So across the development of the artwork, I also had a number of consultation feedback sessions with some fellow artists, including Daniel Monash, Phasmid Studios, and Mary Lee Worthy. And the following few slides are some phrases and reflections that they offered about the work in this development. Words in a mouth opposed to in the world. Summoning wise ghosts. First thought, best thought, improvised nature of things coming together, earnest. The first track is confident but quiet. The final track is questioning but loud. So now I'll play an excerpt from the final track. And then thoughts from that consultation panel about that work. A small sentient being trying to figure out what it is, which was interesting because someone, I think, yeah, Mary Lee Worthy reflected on that prior to my telling them that the work was sort of about this idea of aluminium molecules being exhumed from the earth and then being kind of constituted as like the brittle aerated structures of buildings and cities. Progress being alienating, the sadness of an apartment being built, not a convincing sonic space, a synthetic space. Relation to soundtrack music to create an emotional feeling, but not be from the scene or place. Traveling in the same direction, consistent tempo, a conveyor belt. So yeah, with this project, I was, I guess, interested in the effective power of music in what was at the time increasingly an ocular-centric culture when everything was shifting to an online experience. And because I have strong faith in the power of sound and audio to create cognitive dissonance and experiences of places, ideas, embodiments, times that are otherwise imperceptible in the moment. And finally, I'm just going to share a little bit of information. So this is separate to my creative practice as an artist. And David made mention of this document in the introduction. Clear expectations, guidelines for institutions, galleries, and curators working with trans, non-binary, and gender diverse artists. This was written by myself and fellow artist Spence Messai in 2018 and then published in 2019 with support from Countess, who are an Australian feminist arts org who research and share data about gender representation in the Australian arts industry. And the document was also supported by the National Association for Visual Arts And it exists as a suggested best practice document for the people listed in the title, but it also exists as like a self-advocacy document. So that's why I share it sometimes in talks to say that this exists on the internet. And you can just find it by typing clear expectations NAVA, and it can be a functional document that artists might take to museums and galleries before their participation in programs or exhibitions. So that was like a weirdly pragmatic note to end on. It's like another part of my brain. And I am ending there, so thank you.
Firstly, thank you so much, Archie, for taking us through those projects, and really congratulations on such a great career so far. We've got time for questions, so if you'd like to ask a question, and we have got another technical issue. If you've got a question, June, do people, oh yeah, wave your hand so that June can come and find you. So anyone with a question? Yeah, please.
Hi, I can just yell if you need.
Just yell.
I was just interested before you were talking about the first person, like people in general thinking of themselves as chronically unique, and how that idea sort of, I don't know, intersects with your practice or your conception of being the artist making these works, and sort of, I don't know if I'm misinterpreting it, but a lot of the work seemed to come from a place with you as the first person, I don't know, center of most of it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good question, and something that I am like continually trying to understand by making artwork. I guess I don't really like experience being a person as like a straightforward A to B thing, experience, phenomenon. And I guess like my suspicion is probably that many people don't, and like that maybe that's an interesting thing about trans subjectivity, is to say like, oh, we can all change, or like change is possible, and we're not hemmed into like one thing or another thing. So I guess that's like sometimes how I think about that. And then I agree that my practice is like a kind of self-portraiture, but maybe what I hope for is that it's like a self-portraiture that's saying like, how can I let go of a kind of single self idea. And so part of my PhD research is to see, well, like what other artists are also thinking in this way and doing that too. I'm not sure if that kind of approaches an answer to your question, or if I kind of got the question right, or what you were intending to ask. So I hope that
I don't think it's really impressive to have before, but just was interested if you had more thoughts on it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I can yell if you want. Okay. Obviously, a lot of your work talks about the trans and gender diverse experience. So how does the lived experience as someone who is trans and gender diverse, how does that inspire your art and your art practice and your career as an artist?
I think it's just unavoidable. Like, I, in the past, have made choices not to talk about gender identity publicly. And then things happen politically and in the world, which makes it feel like the stakes are higher, and actually Weirdly, I'm 32 years old and I'm like an old person in the gender diverse community. And like I've kind of done enough stuff now to have a life that's like sort of stable. And so I feel like there's a kind of responsibility that comes with that. Which yeah, so I think it's sort of like straight people are making straight art, they just don't think about it like that. Or maybe they do. And they make really, you know, art about being straight. I think that I'm trans and I make art, and that my art isn't trans art, but the things that I do are coming through my experience of living in a body that's politicized and my relationship to that. Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah, please, June, right up in the second row. Hang on, just one moment.
I was just wondering, this is just, so I'm trying to get an answer from my perspective and kind of apply it to your perspective, if that makes sense. How do you feel with sorry, I'm really hormonal today. How do you deal with an ambiguous sense of self?
Thank you. I don't know. I don't know, but I want to know. And yeah, once again, it's my suspicion that heaps of us feel unmoored. So I think me, actually it's a lie. I know something. I feel like, yeah, living with an ambiguous sense of self is a power, and at times it can feel disempowering too. It's contradictory, and I think as I get older, something I realize is that there are stable phenomena in the world that I can be grounded in. Whether that's the feeling of the weight of my hands, or knowing that there's lots of trees growing on the planet, and remembering those things which are kind of like unchanging despite perhaps feeling in myself ambiguous and floaty. Thank you for your question.
We've got time for one more question. Yeah, please. Hang on.
It's just for Zoom. Thank you.
I'll also talk so you can hear me as well. I was just wondering, as you know, the cross section kind of, there was a few kind of instances of that in what you showed today, and from that I kind of, like you were talking about before, in terms of, I guess, the politicization, sorry, and the kind of, I guess, physical and kind of and intangible aspects of the self that kind of contribute to one's identity. I mean, that's what I was getting from it. I was just wondering if there was a particular symbolic, if cross sections were like a specific kind of symbolic motif in your practice, and if you could go into that at all and the meaning of that to you.
Yeah, I can speak to that briefly. Let me think about how to do that. So that image of a head without a face comes from a medical tradition of imaging bodies, and that image is called a frontal coronal cross-section. And there's so many things tied up in my understanding in relationship to that image. And at the moment, I am thinking about future video work that maybe also has imagery of dissected bodies, and it these things come through like my understanding of actually like medieval Europe and torture practices, and how those things became Western medicine, and the violence that is imbued in those images. So I think about that. I want to grow more aware of it in the future work that I make as well. But for me, that image in that past work was also a effective way of communicating, like a self that can't be identified through like the contemporary use of like facial recognition software, and how to sort of suggest living and being in a very visceral way, which is like reclaimed from those power structures.
Please join me in thanking Archie for such extraordinary generosity. Thank you to everyone in Federation Hall and in Zoom land, and we look forward to welcoming you to Art Forum next Thursday, same time, same channel. And I guess speakers Lisa Webb, who's here with us today. So we look forward to you joining us then. Thank you again. Bye-bye. Yeah.